Beautiful, beautiful. Welcome everyone. I'm excited about this presentation. My name is Kelechi Egwim. I'm a member of United Black Community, and this is our 20th year, which is crazy. 20th year during the Back to Africa Forum, and this year we wanted to really go back and look at a country that we don't uh, consider enough, considering a few things which I'll share later on in the presentation. I have Bobby Mamu, another member of United Black Community, and others will be joining later on as well.
Yes.
I welcome all of you. So greetings, Bobby.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Bo. All right, so we're going to jump right in to the topic. So uh, I'm going to try to do a bit of a history lesson, not too much history, but I do think it's important to understand the context of the conversation. Because I thought about the current climate that we're in and the move to repatriate and the fact that uh, the continent is becoming more and more appealing, I'll put it that way, to people. And I want to make sure that we are aware of some of the information that we should be aware of, and that we're moving in a way that best serves us to take advantage of all the opportunities that exist for us. And I was thinking about this so-called giant of Africa as a topic. So that being said, okay, so um, to go back, so the country that we know as Africa, know as Nigeria now, and I'm putting it that way because that area wasn't always known as Nigeria, right? But now we know it as Nigeria. That particular country uh, got its independence in 1960, just a few years after Ghana. But prior to that, various people, have inhabited that area since at least 13,000 BC. So uh, it's a very old area, right? And its history is long, and I'm not going to get into all the details of it, but I am going to cover some of it a little bit, just so we have a context when we say Nigeria. I think it's always important to recognize that the countries that we recognize today in terms of where they are, their boundaries, their names, their characteristics, did not exist 500 years ago. Um, Many of them are constructs of a colonial history. It's the reality, they are what they are. I just don't need to ask what's the real name of Nigeria, because such a thing didn't exist at the time. But it is what it is. It is a construct that is real now, but it is important to recognize it didn't exist, especially when we talk about repatriation and connection with ethnicity and even reparations. We have to understand that the people that we're referring to are not the same people. They have always been there, right? So it's important for that conversation. So that being said, one of the one of the oldest civilizations in the region is now known as Nigeria, is the Knox civilization. They go back to at least uh 1500 BC, very long time. And there are other ancient civilizations as well. Some we don't have names for them. One thing about the sub-Saharan tropical rainforest where most of Nigeria sits, is that not a lot of things survive the climate over time. So we can tell the people who were there in different areas, but we can't always, there's no continuity of that history. Because even though some had written records, some of the materials used to document that are lost. Some were lost over time, some were destroyed by colonizers, but either way, there's a break in information. And a lot of work in remembering now is doing the necessary work to fill in the gaps, and there are lots of gaps. But that being said, we know of several pre-colonial civilizations, kingdoms, empires in the region, including the Hausa, Oyo, Benin Kingdom, and the Borneo, and many others. And these kingdoms that still remain, so their histories are easy to preserve because you have a continuity, right? But there are many, many others that were there prior to colonial times. So that being said, in terms of the region that is now called Nigeria, it was around the 11th century that Islam spread to the area, the northern region in particular, um, which is where you have the Hausa, Fulani people primarily. They adopted Islam, and it slowly took a greater presence in their particular cultural dynamics, politics, and so on and so forth. Um, and like in all of Africa, and this is something that we need to know as Africans in the diaspora, um, the slave trade didn't start with the Europeans. And it's a fact, but it's not a fact that many of us know. When we think of slavery in the diaspora, we most often think about the transoceanic slave trade, or oftentimes called the transatlantic slave trade. But the transportation, the taking of African people, particularly West African people, to foreign lands wasn't started by the Europeans. Um, it was started by Islamic people. I would say Arabs, but many of them were Africans. And the history, which I'm not going to cover all here, goes back to a treaty, that dates back to 600 AD, between 600 AD and 800 AD, but around 600 AD, after uh, the Arabians invaded North Africa a few centuries earlier, and were able to eventually take control of North Africa, particularly around Egypt, and spread and continue to spread. There was a lot of warring with the indigenous people. Of course, indigenous people of that region were African people, Black people, right? But they were pushed further and further south, or in their case, the way they saw the world, uh, further up the Nile, if you will. And at some point, they reached a treaty with the Nubian rulers to prevent them from continuing to go south. Because you may wonder, well, if they conquered Africa up until this point, why isn't southern Central Africa? Why didn't the Arabians go further south than that? It was because it was a treaty that was reached with the Nubian rulers, and in exchange for the Arabians not continuing their conquest of the continent south into down the Nile, or up the Nile, into the hinter regions, the central regions of the continent. There was a treaty that was reached, and the Nubian rulers agreed to pay
Kelechi,
tribute
you're muted.
to Arabia, um, and uh, and it was an annual tribute that they would pay, and that tribute was in the form of people, right? People that would, because at that time the Arabians weren't just enslaving Africans. Of course, there was no such thing as Africans synonymous being enslaved. They were enslaving Europeans and everybody at that point. They had the whole Mediterranean locked down, and they were the center of power. So the treaty required that people be sent, not necessarily um, enslaved people the way we think about it now, but people be sent annually as tribute to Arabia. And eventually, the leaders of that particular region figured out they didn't have to always send their own people. They could send anybody. As long as they sent a tribute, they were fulfilling their part of the treaty, and they weren't concerned about the Arabians, coming further south because they were getting, their tributes. So at some point, they began the practice of going to further south or further west to capture people, for lack of a better term, and send them to Arabia. And that led to a whole cascade of events. Of course, with Islam, there was a long established trade of goods and things like that. So there were so-called roads or trade routes all throughout that went into what is now West Africa and Central Africa and Eastern Africa. So these routes and eventually became routes that were used to transport these tributes, which led to the evolution of what became known as the trans-Saharan slave trade. So that's how slavery was introduced to Africa. That's how it again became established, and a lot of kingdoms, were part of that. But like a lot of Africa, when Islam came, oftentimes they brought the slave trade with them. So in the early 1500s, and I really want to point this out, but this is sort of a stickler. I'm a stickler for this. We really need to let go of this fictional 1619 date period. It's utterly meaningless. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't even mean what they say it means. But it is a propaganda tool that's been used by different folks for different reasons. It's actually not connected with history, with our history, in the sense that it's not a significant time for us. It was neither the first Europeans to come to America. It wasn't even the first British to come to America. It wasn't the first of anybody to come to America. It was just when America the first successful, and that's not even true because St. Augustine is older than that. So it really has no significance. So let's put that aside. So the transatlantic slave trade goes back to the early 1500s, a little before that actually, in terms of the folks who went to Europe, in terms of coming to the Americas, early 1500s, and that eventually became the dominant form of transporting enslaved people, as opposed to going to Saudi Arabia or going from north, or going east. In some instances, enslaved people were being taken across the ocean, sometimes going to Europe and sometimes, but most of the time over time, towards the Americas, both north, south, and Caribbean, and so on and so forth. Right. So in terms of Nigeria, it's important to understand its history because all through this period, there are people, kingdoms and, civilizations in the region who were eventually, some participated and some resisted. Many resisted, but eventually everybody was caught up in it, right? So some of the most powerful empires in the region were the ones that participated, because they were rewarded for their participation, which made them powerful as a result of the slave trade. The Oyo and the Dahomey being examples of that, right? And I know Dahomey is associated with Benin, but you have to remember at this time, the Oyo Empire encompassed a lot of what is now Dahomey, and there was a lot of back and forth with those two empires, even as sometimes they were pro slavery, sometimes they were anti-slavery, and sometimes they fought back and forth with each other on that subject, along with all the other other kingdoms that were in that area. It was a lot of fright, a lot of fighting back and forth, which also led to the destabilization of each of these various empires over time, fueled by the same slave trade that they oftentimes saw at some point as a benefit, which ultimately it was not, because even the rulers themselves were eventually sent into slavery, many of them. So that being said, in terms of Nigeria, the British influence in the region began in the 19th century, and I know this is not a full topic of this workshop, but I do want to set the context so we understand the significance of the region, right? So when we say Nigeria, this is what we're talking about. The British were uh, first introduced themselves initially as traders, but you know how it goes. They eventually were able to establish the Oil River Protectorate in 1884. Of course, that was right when the Belgium Conference uh, had started, and eventually the British took control of the region, were given control of the region as a result of the compromise of other European nations. And the first place they really took a foothold was in the northern part of Nigeria, which is the Sokoto Caliphate, as it's called, and some of the other caliphates in the northern region. So throughout this period, there was a lot of resistance, especially in the South, especially in the Southeast, but even in the Southwest, there was a lot of resistance to British rule, even though they initially came in through the area that is closer to where we see Lagos now. There was a lot of resistance going further into the hinterlands of the region. So they went north, and because of the history of Islam and slave trade, it was easier for them to infiltrate that area and now use them to now move south into other regions like the Igbo region and so on and so forth. By 1914, the British had consolidated their power in all of Nigeria, including northern and the southern protectorates, into the colony and protectorate of Nigeria. That's when the name Nigeria really became prominent, and eventually that was the name of the country. There were many resistance struggles and all over Nigeria, particularly in the South. There was a constant battle for the British to maintain control. There are famous battles that I encourage you to look into as well. But eventually, in 1960, Nigeria reached a negotiated independence. It was not a bloody independence. The British saw that they could no longer control or keep this territory. They were going to lose it, especially with Ghana getting its independence 3 years earlier in a very similar situation, but also you saw what was going on in the East, where they were not so and folks were not so inclined to negotiation. So they found it their best interest to allow Nigeria to gain independence. And eventually, that was negotiated, they were agreed upon, and October 1st, 1960 is Nigeria's Independence Day. It did take a few years to actually form the country that the Constitution, so forth. It took about 3 years to form the first republic, Nigerian Republic. Nnamdi Azikiwe, of a Pan-Africanist, who's commonly known as Zeke of Africa, was the first president of the first Nigerian Republic, and some places you'll see him listed as the first Nigerian president, but there was a reconstitution of Nigeria, and there was another president. So some will give him credit as being the first president. Some will say that was a different Nigeria. Either way, he officially became president in 1963, sorry. And he ruled for 3 years. So that being said, there was a civil war. You may have heard of the Biafran War. And, a lot of back and forth, strife, trying to make this entity of Nigeria work for the people, and different parties, some supported by the British, some not. But eventually, Nigeria continued to prosper and grow, and was known as the Giant of Africa. Even at its independence, it was known as that. and it became more and more of an economic power, mainly because of the population that it had at the time, and the mineral resources that were already known to be in the ground, primarily oil, right? So at the time, for Pan-Africanists in the diaspora, Nigeria was sort of the place to go if you were going to go to Africa, unless you were going to engage in uh, revolutionary activities. If you were going to invest or visit for cultural places, Nigeria was one of the more prominent places, especially if you're talking about the 70s, even early 80s was still that way. The Yoruba traditions were exported uh, to the West, and there was a lot of presence of Igbos in the West as well. So the cultural influence was really heavy, and places like Ibadan, especially University of Ibadan, was really popular. University of Ibadan is considered the first university in Nigeria, even though that's not technically true. The first university is actually University of Nigeria in Nsukka, uh, but because University of Ibadan was initially established as, I think it was a college of University of England. Eventually, they changed University of Nigeria, so there's a little dispute into which is the first university. But either way, Ibadan was a favorite destination, as well as Ife, and of course Lagos, right? Lagos has always been central. At the time, it was the capital of Nigeria. It's no longer the capital of Nigeria. Um, um, though published before independence, right, which was 1960s, I mentioned, Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe grew in popularity in the diaspora as a novel about indigenous resistance to colonialism. And I'm sure you all are familiar with the book. If you haven't read the book, it's still poignant today. Um, and so that was something that really projected the cultural reality of present day Nigerians into the diaspora. And of course, Fela Anipula Po Kuti, or Ransom Kuti before he changed his name, um, helped project the musical, political, cultural influence of Nigeria globally in the 70s, 80s, into the 90s. He died in 1997. Today, the cultural influence of Nigeria continues. We know about Nollywood. I mean, I think I'm not sure if Nollywood surpassed Bollywood as the uh, international source of movies, but I know it's close to it, especially in the diaspora community. Nollywood is popular everywhere. And of course, Afrobeat, the biggest international stars in music, are usually from Nigeria. And considering it's one country out of 54, why is this country always there? There's a reason for that, and we'll talk about some of that a little bit later. Of course, now there's this thing called Beti December. Like, what is that? Well, it has been a tradition for some time for Nigerians to go to Nigeria in December for parties, festivals, and whatnot. It's become more and more popular in the diaspora to travel to Nigeria. And now it's not just Nigeria; it's Ghana is also promoting Get to December. So it's a time to basically go to the continent to party. I'm not sure how much cultural education is happening in that period, but it's a thing, right? So it's a thing that's currently hot. December, go to, between, well, during Kwanzaa, right? Between Christmas and New Year's, the December happens in Nigeria, all over Nigeria and other parts of the continent as well. But that's a thing um, that's happening now. But even with all that, Nigeria is still not a number one popular destination for Africans in the diaspora. Um, Countries like Ghana is by far the most popular. South Africa, also popular. Kenya, Tanzania, to a less extent, but Nigeria, with its significance, as I mentioned earlier, you would think, why not, right? But then, today we want to talk about, why Nigeria? Like, that's the better question. Why Nigeria? What's so special about Nigeria that it would be a place for diasporans to connect to, right? So there's a couple of aspects I'm going to take to answer this question. But first, I want to talk about Nigeria itself, right? So 28% of all Africans that were taken to the West during the transoceanic slave trade, the Maafa, came from the region that is now Nigeria. So think about all Black people, right? And think about all Black people that were taken during the diaspora. Think about all the places on the continent. This one place represents over a quarter. Now, there are 54 countries in Africa, but this one country represents more than a quarter, right? Almost a third of the Africans that were taken during that period, overrepresented. And there's a reason for that. And we'll talk about some of that later on as well. So far and beyond comparison, an African and diaspora is far more likely to have lineage in the region that is now known as Nigeria from one of the ethnic groups that are now in Nigeria than anywhere else. Even though Ghana is a popular destination, you're much less likely to actually have Ghanaian ancestry. And that, even though, of course, we know the slave trade was happening there, but it was more people being brought to the regions through the Cape Coast, through Mina. Not that they were from that region, but they were brought there and taken, so they weren't native to those regions in many cases. But that's just how the slave trade worked. In terms of actual ancestry, Nigeria is overrepresented in the diaspora. And you'll find places in Jamaica and all over the Caribbean and, parts of South America, Central America as well, that have just pure names from Yoruba, Igbo, and folks like that. So there's an overrepresentation of the people like the Hausa, like the Yoruba, like the Igbo, like the Fulani, and the diaspora, relative to any other ethnic group. There are some other represented groups as well from very, very small countries, like Bioko Island and places like that. But as a country, as a population, Nigeria has is the origin of a large proportion of the diaspora. So the reason why the diaspora will want to connect back, if you talk about going back home, that destination is more likely to be Nigeria than some of the places that are more popular at this time, right? So that's important to know. Another thing, this sort of a way of setting the context is that Nigeria is obviously not the largest place geographically on the continent, but again, the population density is higher, much higher. So 1 out of every 5 Black people on the planet are Nigerian. And that may sound like a crazy thing to say until you look at the numbers, right? So what that means is that if you add up all the Black people on the planet right now, a fifth of them are in Nigeria. I'm not even talking about the ones that are Nigerians that are in the rest of the world. I'm talking about in Nigeria itself. So it's not just the most populous country of African peoples in the world, and it is, but the next one is not even close, right? So overrepresentation, the population alone is near a quarter of a billion at this point. It's just shy of 100 million of the population of the United States. And it's projected to continue to grow in that manner. Nigeria is set to surpass China as the second most populous country in the world by 2100. At that point, India is projected to be the most populous country, and then it'll be Nigeria, and then China. So imagine the world, and we're not far from that world where there's more people in Nigeria than in China. China used to be like, there's so many Chinese, but it's about to be more Nigerians than Chinese. Again, setting it apart from other countries on the continent, in terms of its importance as a global entity, right, in a lot of different realms. So, and by 100 years, Nigeria is expected to be the most populous country in the world, a world that also includes India and China. So Nigeria is the growth rate, but population growth is far exceeds that of India, which population is I wouldn't say the decline, but it's not growing as fast as it was. So Nigeria in 100 years will be the most populous country in the world. And and that's really the world we want to be preparing for, because that's the world that's coming. That's the world that our great grandchildren will be living in, right? So a little bit about Nigeria facts wise, then we'll sort of get into some of the deets. So Nigeria has 36 states, several regions, and the regions tend to be divided by, well, ethnic groups. Certain ethnic groups are in certain regions, right? And you sort of see a population density there. Obviously, the most populous, most dense part of the country is Lagos. Lagos is more dense than New York City. I think twice as dense as New York City. And then you have other population densities in the southeast of Nigeria. It's a big country, quite diverse in terms of the ethnicity. In this instance, I'm using ethnicity to refer to ethnic group. We don't always think of it that way, but we within ourselves are more diverse than the world. So we don't bring diversity. We already diverse, just within our population. And I'm speaking generally in terms of Black people, genetically, phonetically, and all the different ethnicalities you could think of, right? But within Nigeria itself, you had this very diverse population from north to south. So of all the ethnic groups in Nigeria, and there are several, there are a few major ones. I'll say three major ones. Even though the House and Fulani sort of go together. So you got the House of Fulani, you have the Yoruba, and you have the Igbo, and then there's a lot of smaller ethnic groups as well. The literacy rate in Nigeria is high relative to the rest of the continent, and this becomes significant in terms of when you think about the prospects of investing, right? And starting a business and connecting in tangible, practical ways. Nigerians are by far, I would say, overeducated. Even outside of the diaspora, they're overeducated. I think even in America, I think Nigerians at this point represent the majority of doctors, Black doctors in medical schools. So it's a cultural thing, and it's evident in the population there, right? And that's just about almost close to the literacy rate of the U.S., but far more than the rest of the continent, and young, right? So in terms of investments, Nigeria is one of those emerging markets because of its large population, because of the youth average age of the population, because of rapid urbanization. There's a lot of opportunities, to get connected. I'm saying in terms of how we look at Nigeria, we need to recognize the opportunities that are there to not, this is not and this is a topic that I try to emphasize whenever we have this program, is that we need to change our relationship with the continent. The continent is not a charity, right? The continent is a salvation. The continent is an opportunity for African people to actually save ourselves, to create opportunities for ourselves, to create prosperity for ourselves. So if we continue to see Africa as a charity case, as something that needs us, no, Africa doesn't need us, right? We need Africa. Nigeria doesn't need the diaspora. The diaspora needs Nigeria. There are things there that are valuable, useful, beneficial to us. and the diaspora. And the sooner we recognize it, the sooner we can take advantage of that in a way that is supportive of the global population of our people, right? So changing that relationship with the continent, with Nigeria, is really important for true prosperity of our people. And there are some very tangible, measurable things that we should be aware of that hopefully will incite us to change that relationship and find ways to improve ourselves by improving the continent, right? For our benefit and for mutual benefit of our brothers and sisters on the continent and globally, right? So, as I mentioned, population growth is also comes with uh, colossal increase, I would say, in terms of the demand, right, and demand in the diversity of real estate, especially in growing urban centers. One thing that is important uh, in in Nigeria, like some other places, and I mentioned Ghana. This is not an anti-Ghana presentation, but it's the most popular, so it's a good comparison, right? Um, in Nigeria, when you buy property, you own that property. It's your property perpetually, right? In some other places, like Ghana, because they have a law and is in their constitution, based on the constitution, uh, you have to be Ghanaian to own property. And even that's sketchy. So what happens is people say they go to Ghana and they buy property. They don't buy property because you can't legally buy property unless you're Ghanaian. And even when you're Ghanaian, that's difficult. What people usually get is these leases, 99-year or 50-year leases. And that's all you can get. So when you buy a house, buy a property, build a business, the land still belongs to the indigenous people, but particularly the chief of that area. So you can't really buy land, right? But in Nigeria, you can buy land. You can literally, you know, identify land, survey it, pay for it, get a certificate for it, and you got the title, you got the deed. That's your property. You can give it to your great grandchildren if you want to. Nobody's coming for it because it's your property. That's not the case in other places, right? So again, it's an opportunity that exists in Nigeria. It doesn't exist in some other places that we should be, conscious of because it's to our advantage, right? As a passive investment, land just ends up being a really smart long-term hold, allowing you to win the benefits of rising value, which comes with demand over time, especially if you buy in an area where there's rapid growth happening, right? So that's a little bit about the tourism. There's a lot more opportunities for investment as well in Nigeria besides land, obviously, agriculture and even mining. There's a lot of different opportunities for investing, but it's just to sort of for us to think about Nigeria in that context. But in terms of tourism, uh, Nigeria has a lot to offer. It's not known for its international tourism. Nigeria has a huge tourist industry. The difference is that Nigeria's tourist industry is domestic tourism. So there are a lot of hotels, restaurants, and everything that tourists would normally uh, look for and use, even Airbnbs and everywhere pretty much. But the industry is focused on Nigerians. Nigerians patronize the tourist industry because Nigeria is a oil-rich country, and I guess that's an understatement. I believe it's like the fifth. I'm not sure about today, but yesterday it was the fifth largest supply of oil to the United States, and that fifth, right? So Nigeria is a major world OPEC, oil supplier. So most of the wealth that the country has or enjoys, I should say, or the leaders enjoy, however you want to see it, come from oil. So there's not a lot of demand from the government point of view for more tourism. It's not a big part of the economy. So unfortunately, because of that, there's not a lot of investment in tourism. I think that's a short-sighted reality, but that's the reality right now. We just don't have that investment in international tourism in particular. But Nigerians themselves value travel within Nigeria. So because of that, there's a thriving domestic tourism industry, which is also an opportunity for international tourism, even though the focus is on Nigerians, the things that are there are obviously things anybody can enjoy, right? So this is Vegas. This is the harbor, or this not the harbor, what do they call it? The docks. A lot of yachts get parked there, and you can pretty much go anywhere from there, from that part. And there's private docks and public docks and so on and so forth, right? This is um a beach in Lagos. There are lots of them. They're constantly building something. Uh, and of course, Badogu Market is the largest market in West Africa. I'm not sure if it's all of Africa, but it's definitely West Africa. People from all over the continent come here to buy their goods to sell, especially neighboring countries from Liberia all the way to probably Angola, definitely Cameroon. A lot of goods come into the port in Nigeria. Cotonou is right next to Nigeria. That's the second that's the second largest port, but no comparison to the port in Lagos. So a lot of goods come into Lagos, and a lot of things are produced in Nigeria. And that's the other thing. Nigeria has an economy that is essentially self-sufficient in the sense that when you look at, let me go back to this image right here. When you look at this image in any other country in Africa, the proportion of these buildings, these skyscrapers, these yachts, these, hotels, what have you, that you see that are owned by Nigerians is very high, upwards of 90%, 90% plus. While if you go to other countries, the percentage of indigenous people that own the real estate, that own the businesses, the banks, is very, very low, right? You're talking about in some places, like Senegal, like Kenya, Tanzania, um, the percentage of indigenous ownership of these businesses is very, very low, in the teens in some instances. So Nigeria has a very productive population, and a lot of goods Nigerians consume are produced in Nigeria. So everyday things, there's nothing that's not produced in Nigeria. Everything from cars to toothpaste. There are multiple producers all over the country. Unfortunately, some Nigerian producers will put made in other places because Nigerians oftentimes will like to see that it's made somewhere else, but it's really made in Nigeria. But there are Nigerian companies making everything from from Indomie to to whatever. It's made locally and distributed widely. So that's a unique thing about Nigeria that you really can't say about any other country. Again, the demand is high, the opportunities are high. If you have an idea and you want to invest, there's probably no better place where you can have the best return for your investment, right? So this is very busy Balogu market. A lot of fabric is produced, printed, uh, woven in some instances. In Nigeria, there are a lot of fabric factories, and this market is where a lot of merchants come to buy their goods, and then they sell it in different places all over the country and all over the continent, especially in West Africa, right? So in Lagos has a lot to offer. I'm going to try to just show a few things because there is a lot, but I was just recently there, so I'm going to show a couple of must-sees, right? If you're in Lagos. So this lady here is Mama Nike. If you frequent maybe the museum in DC, the Smithsonian Museum of African Art, her stuff is usually there or featured there from time to time. She's an international artist, and she's always very welcoming to come into her gallery. She has a gallery in Lagos and in Abuja. She does workshops for groups, children, what have you. This is the largest art gallery in Africa. She has art. It's primarily from Nigerian artists, but there are pieces from folks from all other parts of the continent, and it's so much stuff. Can't really share how. I mean, she must have uh, millions of pieces. I don't know how many millions of pieces of all types, both sculpture and paintings, anything you can imagine. And if you've seen African art and a major African artist, they probably have a piece um, in Nike's gallery. And she, she also has fabrics, and it's a lot. Whenever you go there, she makes people feel very welcome. This is an artist you may have seen who makes different animals out of recycled tires. And whenever you go there, she treats you like royalty, and you get to dress up and take some pictures with her. But if you're in Lagos, I would definitely recommend going to Nikkei Gallery. Of course, you have the National Museum in Lagos, which features the various ethnic groups in Nigeria, their art, their history, some of their cultural displays, and what have you. So that's a really important place to visit when when you can in Lagos. This is Mankala. You might recognize that as a very popular ancient African game, used in a variety of ways, including even warfare, when kings would, use this as opposed to fighting each other on the battlefield. They would actually play a game and decide the winner. So very historical. This is from the Yoruba Museum, the Rando Museum, also in Lagos. So there's a lot of museums in Lagos. We mentioned Fela earlier. Of course, Fela was born in Abeokuta in Oyo State, which is very close to Lagos. The new shrine is in Lagos, operated by Femi and his other children. He performs there, so you can actually still go and see him. I think he performs on Sundays now there, and it is the new shrine dedicated to Fela. And it's a event space, sort of a courtyard of food vendors and artists of all types, and it's still a home for the unwanted youth, if you will. They get to go there and make a living for themselves and showcase their art. So it's still serving the same purpose that Fela intended to, even now. And there's also the museum, which is this is Fela's gravesite. He's buried there, and the museum has several pieces, from his life, also located in Lagos. So another tourist site, I guess. This is the Conservation Center in Lekki. It's dedicated to preserving the plants and vegetation in the region. It's a swampland, and it's preserved in that way so that the native plants are able to flourish, as well as some small animals, as well, primarily monkeys, who are always there. And this is the longest canopy walk in West Africa. So you got to do that. It's not too bad. It's a lot of fun. Also, not that far from Lagos in Osun State, about 2 states away, you have waterfalls, a lot of them. This particular one is called the Olumiri Waterfall. It's 7 waterfalls. The first 3 you can walk through fairly easily. The fourth one, it gets much more difficult as you go higher up, and you can get the first 2, that's fine. First 3, that's fine. Whatever you feel like you're doing, but it's a popular place. Again, I'm really excited to see the young Nigerians really appreciating and taking advantage of a lot of these sites, because again, not a lot of domestic tourism, right? But they are recognizing them as places where they should preserve and use and appreciate. It's an opportunity for the diaspora to be part of it, right? Because it is still there for us, and Nigeria has more to offer than any other one place on the continent, right? But there's just some pictures from there. And if you go higher up the mountain, there are higher heights and more waterfalls if you're up to it, and you get to see uh, the urban areas and the settlements around there. One place that isn't as popular in terms of people knowing about it. Everybody knows about, well, since everybody, a lot of people know about Elmina, Cape Coast, in Ghana, in Senegal. You know about Gorée Island. In Benin, yeah, Ouida. And these places are, of course, very important. But another major slave port in West Africa is Badagry. So there's a museum there dedicated to that history. This is a statue dedicated to the end of slavery. And they have some artifacts from that period, as well as some of the cannons and so on and so forth associated with the slave trade that was happening in that region. But there's also a place called the Point of No Return in Badagry. So what would happen is that enslaved people would be brought to that region, brought to that area, and they'll be taken across a boat to a small little island, and on the other side of the island would be the ocean. So this is the entrance when you get off the boat ride from the mainland to the island, where folks would now be walked to the coast, to the beach, where small boats would now take folks along. I have a video. Hopefully it'll play. We'll see how that goes. So, and this is Badagry slave route, and it's about a 15-minute walk from the water on the other side. So it's not a huge island. It's more of a strip, right? So on the other side of it is the Atlantic. On the way there, there's a well that was there and was used for for people to drink, to get water as they were traveling from there. Oftentimes that'd be the last water source they get before they're put on boats and eventual ships. So I'm gonna try to see if I can play this video. Let's see how this will work. This video was just taken about a month ago. So we're facing the the water, where the boat would drop you off, and we're walking to the beach where boats would pick people up and take them to the ships that were waiting um, on the other side. So there's a paving there to preserve the road or the path. On the other side of it, um, you have the Atlantic Ocean, which is the was the point of no return as it's called. Um, and that structure there was meant to be a monument to returning Africans coming back from a diaspora after ancestors were taken away, their children coming back. That particular monumental structure project is on hold. I guess I'll put it that way. Um, this is the state of it as it is now. It was never finished, but it does still stand there. So on the other side of that is the Atlantic Ocean. And this is an important place considering what we said earlier about 28% of the Africans taken from the continent into slavery to the West came from this region. This particular beach would have had more of our ancestors carried away than some of the more popular places that we go to. But because we're not seeing Nigeria as a place to reconnect with those ancestors, very few of us end up coming here. So it ends up being a very special place, an important place to go to walk on that shore again and let the Atlantic hit your feet and connect with that water that connects us, and knowing that on the other side of the ocean is the Americas. So tracing the footsteps of the ancestors and returning in their stead. So very powerful place. And this is in Badagry, Lagos. This is part of Lagos State. Lagos is also, Ikeja is the capital of Lagos, but Lagos is also a city in Lagos. So this is in the same state, just closer to the country of Benin, right, in Badagry. And there are several monuments there dedicated, newly dedicated to our enslaved ancestors and the memory of the root and the suffering that they went through. So Nigeria has a lot of sort of natural wonders, right? One of those waterfalls. We have a lot of waterfalls, a lot of caves, waterfalls all over the place, and particularly in a region called Enugu. Enugu translates into top of the mountain, right? So there are a lot of really beautiful and imaginable places there. So we're going to share some of them, right? So this is one of those other places. This is called the Nkwo Cave and Waterfall. So this is the centerpiece is actually looking up from the cave. So that's the outside up there, right? So it's hard to sort of tell, but it's the waterfall. This is during the dry season, so it's not as heavy. But during the rain season, it really comes down heavy. But it's a beautiful place, almost esoteric. Doesn't seem real when you're there, but it's a beautiful sight to behold. Let me see if I can play this video. See how it goes. Short video of the waterfall. This is the Asiago Crystal Spring. Um, there's a cave there, but what really makes it special is this waterfall and natural spring. Part of it is hot or warm. I wouldn't say hot, warm, and part of it is cool. We say cold, warm and cool, right? Um, and it's a very beautiful sight. We'll see some of it. Lots of bamboo around you, very serene, very quiet. Water's crystal clear. You can see the bottom. It's crystal clear. People, go there, swim, just enjoy themselves, and it is not crowded. Despite how beautiful it is, we were pretty much the only ones that were there. Again, you don't see, the crowd that you see in other places, despite these wonderful wonders that are there. And this is also in the Enugu region. Just wanted to show a few of these. Of course, we know that, Nigeria has a lot of cultural uh, wealth, and everywhere you go, there's music playing. Somebody's dancing, singing, playing drums, or what have you. So it's a beautiful thing to behold. In this same region, there's a place called Snake Hill. Basically, from going from the city, going to the area I'm going to show you all, we have this very unique feature. Uh, there's this road that just winds and winds and winds. It's called Snake Road, right? So, but the top of Snake Road, you have the pine forest. This is the only pine forest in West Africa. There are pine forests in Southern Africa, especially Eastern Africa, but it's the only pine forest in Africa, in West Africa. And it's just an odd thing. You don't think of pine forests in West Africa, but it is there, so it's an oddity. It was planted by someone many, many decades ago, and it flourishes. So it's a special site for locals because there's nowhere else they're gonna go and see a pine tree. So um, it is notable. And then it's also very close to the waterfall I was showing you all earlier. So one of the things that's really interesting about Nigeria is that there's a lot of uh, unique places for world history that surpasses Nigeria, even surpasses Africa. So one of those places is a place called Leja, right? Um, Leja is the name of a kingdom. But what makes Leja really, really interesting is that Leja is the site of the oldest iron smelting site in the world. What you're looking at, these rocks look like rocks, are actually iron ores. And iron ores are the byproduct of iron smelting, where you're making iron tools or weapons or whatever the case may be, from the kiln. And they all start off with the same shape. That's why they also have a regularity to them. They just, after making the iron, the ores are just stacked. So this ores don't degrade. We're talking about all the civilizations in this region going back to 13,000 BC, and how we have so little information about them. One thing about this place is that because it is iron ore, it doesn't spoil. It's survived for millennia, right? These have been carbon dated. I think at least some of them go back to 2000 BC. Now, the people who live there now, they don't have records that go back that far. And I don't know that they were the same people, because that's what happens, civilizations, kingdoms come and go. But the place is still there, right? And they preserve that history, and they hold all of these artifacts sacred. So we were able to meet with them last time we were there, not that long ago. And yeah, I mean it's amazing, and there's a lot of amazing things that are there, amazing trees that have magical powers. I'll put it that way. That are part of their community and culture, and they take it as their mission to preserve this place. And it's a blessing to be able to go there and to tell you the history, their history in this place as well. And this is Leja. This is near Enugu in the southeastern region of Nigeria. And this is one of the elders telling us the story of their people in the region. This is the king. This is the king of Leja, and the title is Ezel Leja, which means king of Leja. And this is one of the sacred mounds. You can see how regular these iron ores are. This is the same. They're all pretty much the same diameter because they come out of the kiln for the iron smelting, so the regularity to it all. But because of the fact that it is iron ores, it'll be here forever, right? So the history is able to be preserved, even if we don't necessarily know the story or even the name of the particular civilization that was in this region at the time this was being done. It's preserved because of the nature of it, which is an advantage we don't always have, on the continent. So another major kingdom, I mentioned them earlier, the Ari people, right? So the Ari kingdom goes back to about 3000 BC, and there's a long history, and this is the and their telling of it, the birthplace of the Igbos, where the first Igbos settled and then spread. And there's a whole history, which I'm not going to get into, as to how the Igbos came to be there. But it's a powerful place. The Inri Kingdom is the father of the Igbos, and the Igbos are a vast region. They have a tradition of burying the king underground. This was a artist rendition of a particular king's tomb and how it was built. And there are these tombs there of the kings, buried, seated in the same manner, in that particular region, for the Enri kings. One feature that's there are a lot of features. One feature is there is the Trinity. So these are these trees. So they share a root system. These trees that are hundreds of years old. I'm not sure exactly how old they are, over 500 years old. But they're very unique, and there's a whole lot of mythology associated with the trees. But you can actually go into them, and I have a picture. You can actually that center image is actually from inside the tree, right? So they're quite big. So this is some of the features of that that you see in the reading. There's many other features as well, but just to sort of show some of the things that you're not going to see anywhere else. You can only see when you come to Nigeria, right? So just wanted to show it's not just about the economic part of it, because that's sort of not obvious, but that's upfront. But as a tourist destination, you're gonna find that there's far more, and I haven't even scratched the surface really, because there's a Calabar region, there's a Benin. So the country of Benin that we know of now, call Benin is not the Benin Empire of history. So early on, let me see if I can get back to that slide. I showed an image of, let me see if I can get to it, an image of a lost wax iron mask, more of a statue. Here it is. Here's one of them. Right. So I'm sure you've seen these. So this comes from the Benin Kingdom. This is not the country of Benin, right? This is the Benin Kingdom. Benin Kingdom is not in the country of Benin. The Benin Kingdom is in Nigeria. Benin City was the center of the Benin Kingdom. Now, it's a little confusing because they changed the name from Dahomey to Benin, but that's a different place, and there's a whole history that connects them. But some of these civilizations are right there in Nigeria. So we didn't even talk about the Benin Kingdom. The Benin has a wall that surrounds the kingdom. It's called the wall of Benin, and that wall is longer than the Great Wall of China. It's in Benin. It's not all preserved in the sense that, unfortunately, not appreciating the history. You know, people have taken pieces of the wall and built their own houses and things like that, but there's enough of it. It's still there. Of course, we have the drawing, we have the sketches, we have images, we have the drawings of the time when it was still up. Over time, it hasn't been preserved, but it surrounded the city. It was in several levels, and it was I think historically it's the longest man-made structure ever made. And it's in Benin, and it's in Nigeria. So we haven't even scratched the surface in terms of the places you can go, right? The important tourist destinations in Nigeria that we don't think about, especially those of us that are in a diaspora and are dedicated to traveling to the continent. People will go to the same place, go to Tanzania 10 times, right? Go to Ghana 5, 6, 7, 8 times, but haven't been in Nigeria once. It's always like, why, right? You're missing so much of the history. You're looking for the connection. You're looking for the ancestral memory you're trying to capture, and you won't get it. I don't believe you get it anywhere else because of the unique nature of and what Nigeria offers. So let me see if I have any other slides. Just sort of going through everything real quick. Just make sure I didn't leave anything out. So I'm gonna allow time for us to have. I know it's been talking for an hour and a half. Allow time for question and answer. Let me just escape. Do it that way, and allow for a little bit of conversation. Yeah, we'll do that. So if anybody has any questions, I'm gonna stop sharing.
Kelechi, I got a question.
Yeah, bro.
In the beginning, when you were presenting the history of Nigeria, you had mentioned the when the African countries were divided up during that conference.
Right.
Was that conference? I thought that conference was it was originally called the Congo Conference, and from what I understand, it later became the Berlin Conference.
Right.
But you had the Belgian Conference in your writing.
Right. You're correct. Berlin Conference.
Yeah.
It's called a Berlin Conference. You're correct.
And then one other
1884 to 1885.
Yes. Another thing, I see these sculptures that you showed, and I don't know, years ago, man, many years ago, they had a sculpture of, I think it was from Oyo. I can't quite remember, but I remember vividly seeing it, and it had a picture of Martin Luther King, and the likeness was so striking, it was unbelievable.
Hmm.
one of the sculptures that they had from one of these regions in Nigeria.
What medium was the sculpture? Was it iron? Was it
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah.
And
I
it
could
was in,
sort
I
of
think,
see
an
that.
old Ebony magazine way back, maybe, man, 40 years ago. I don't know, but a long time ago, they had that. It was so striking. It was unbelievable. And they made mention of it too.
And it probably came from Benin.
Uh-huh.
They were known for those. I mean, they had so many varieties of them. They were known for those sculptures. So, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
this is to show that ancestral connection.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, bro. Let me see what we got in the chat. Okay. Sister Mona says their ancestries from Bioko Island. I did mention that earlier. Um,
I saw Mama Mona Fua put that in there. What island is this now? You said
Bioko
Boko
Island. It's
Island?
a small island off of coast of West Africa
Hmm.
country.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's part of the Equatorial
Ma-
Guinea.
Are you on
Oh,
two devices, Mom? That might be why you're echoing.
Yes.
Oh, okay, that's why. Yeah. Yep.
Sorry.
It's a small island off of Equatorial Guinea. Yeah, bro.
oh, is that right? How far is Nigeria from Equatorial Guinea?
Not that far. West
Oh, is that
Africa.
right? Oh, okay, okay. Mm-hmm.
Not that far. It's the Equatorial Guinea is the only Spanish speaking country
Yeah, I heard. Yeah.
in
Oh, that's amazing.
yeah, in West Africa. And I don't know if there's any other
I
one in
think in the whole
Africa.
continent.
Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, the whole continent. Yeah,
Yeah,
bro.
yeah. Hmm. They had the ambassador on Carl Nelson show last week, I believe. I think he was the ambassador from Equatorial Guinea, and he was inviting people to come and do business and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, bro.
Nice dialogue.
Yeah, bro. Yeah, bro.
Hmm.
If
Hmm.
anybody has any questions, you can feel free to unmute and ask, or you can put it in the chat and we'll address it as well.
Hmm. Well, if nobody have a question, I got another question.
Go ahead, Bob.
I remember reading years ago about Nigeria's and Africa's textile industry
Mm.
going under. Has Nigeria's textile industry gained much footing as it was years ago? Uh,
Yeah, I don't know about it going under. I mean, it's flourishing. I
mhm,
mean, Nigerians produce a lot of Ankara. Now we don't. We also Sister Nike, the one I showed earlier. She makes
mhm,
uh, she specializes in indigo. So she makes indigo fabric. She has
mhm,
communities, particularly in the north,
uh-huh,
where she works with. They have these indigo, I guess they're called pits, and they're like thousands of years old.
mhm,
So I mean, I don't know about any diminution of that industry. I mean, it's flourishing quite well.
uh-huh.
Both not just in the fabric making, but in the printing as well. As a matter of fact, while I was just there, I had the opportunity to spend some time with uh, Jimmy King. I don't know if you've ever
Who
heard
is
of him.
that?
He's a popular fabric artist. I'm not sure if that's his proper title, but
Uh,
he's a designer. He's a
mhm,
clothing
mhm,
designer. Very popular all over the world. He's based in Surulere, Lagos.
uh-huh.
His stuff is like crazy expensive. He's in high demand.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But yeah, I don't know about any diminution of the industry because it seems to be flourishing.
Oh, okay. That's
Well,
a good thing then.
yeah, bro.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that.
Okay. And one other question. I know in the southern, when you were showing the map and the regions of Nigeria, I noticed a place called Ebony.
Ebony.
How did that name? That's a Kiswahili name. How did that come about, or what's the? You know anything about the origin of that name?
Oh, it's Ebony. That it's not the same thing. Let me share it real quick.
I think it was spelled the same way.
No, not exactly. Can you see it?
No, it's not up.
Okay.
Not Ebony.
Now let me. I open it if I didn't share it. Let me.
It's
screen
spelled
share it.
Ebonyi.
Oh, it's spelled different. Okay, I'm sorry. Looked like it was
Yeah.
spelled the same way.
You see, yeah, it's Ebonyi. Yeah. So this is part of Igbo land.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yes, it's one of the
Okay.
countries. Sorry, the states
Oh,
that
okay.
was created. I guess about 20 years ago. It used to be part of Enugu, but they split Enugu into two. So Ebonyi, yes, it's one of the Igbo states in Nigeria.
Okay. So where's Abuja in this map?
At the center, right in the center, where it says Abuja Federal Federal Capital Territory.
I don't see
Abuja
that.
FC, right here.
Oh, I see it. I see it.
Yeah, Abuja is
FCT.
really smack at the center of the country.
Okay, got you.
Yeah.
Got you.
So it's
Okay.
right at the center. And Abuja has a lot to see as well. As I mentioned, there is a Nikkei gallery there. It's more of a teaching site, but they have a lot of programs for schools and dignitaries, and you can actually make fabric and make jewelry and make things there, more so than the one in Lagos. Of course, you also have Aso Rock, which is this giant, I guess it's a monolith, granite monolith, right next to the president's house, our version of the White House, I guess. And it's that's in Niger State. So it's actually technically in Niger, but it's close to Abuja. There are lakes there. So there's a whole lot of beautiful features near Abuja. I mean, really all over Nigeria. We didn't even, it would probably take, I don't know, probably a 6-month class to do justice to all the various beauties that is Nigeria, especially when you go into the north, plateaus. We have floating lakes, which are, I think there's only two, and there's 3 in the world, I think 2 is in Nigeria, which are lakes on top of a mountain. There's all types of just really, if you're into geographic features, it's quite something. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Well, I'm not hearing any other questions. But I thank everyone for joining. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you gained a perspective on something. And we need to revisit Nigeria as a place to travel to, as a place to invest in, as a place to even repatriate to. There are a lot of opportunities that are in Nigeria, and it's really for us to benefit from them, or not if we don't take advantage of them, and we have an opportunity to. And I don't mean take advantage in a predatory way, but in the sense that this is part of the heritage that the diaspora has. And if you have a heritage and you put it down or you give it up, then it's just your loss. In other words, I know that there are biblical references, right? This is your heritage. So keep it, take it, make something of it. If you don't, then you don't, but it's for you to, right? So that's how I see Nigeria, and that's how I see the continent in general. But it is a special place for all the different reasons that I mentioned over the last hour and 45 minutes. I thank everyone for joining.
Kelechi, could we make a quick announcement about next month's
Yeah, Bo,
forum?
I was getting ready to do that. You can do that, Baba.
Yeah, for those that don't know, United Black Community put on forums every month, generally every month, starting in February. And we have a lot of different array of topics that we cover that's pertinent to African people everywhere. And next month, we'll be at the Holistic Health and Wellbeing E-Life restaurant, and we'll be talking about holistic health and well-being. And join us there at E-Life, 9033 Central Avenue in Capitol Heights. And the new, I know some of us may have not even been to the new building, but it's an opportunity for you to come and see the new facility and break bread with UBC and Brother Baruch and the community, and talk about health and well-being. Very, very, very important topic, y'all. Serious topic.
Yeah, bro. And also in May, around Brother Malcolm's 100th birthday.
May 17th.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
This is 100 years, or it will be his 100th birthday, I should say. And we normally celebrate Brother Malcolm by highlighting the continuation of the work that he lived for. And we'll continue that this year with a program at Thurgood Marshall. Bobby, you want to talk about the program a little bit?
Yeah, so far we have the program scheduled from 7 until 10 at Thurgood Marshall. And before the program, Brother Tony Browder would do a next tour of the new exhibit that he has on the second floor from, I think from 5 to 6 or 6 to 7. I don't know, one of those times, but that's what will start the program. And then we'll, so far we've gotten guest speaker Ben Chavis. He's the guest speaker as of now. We still coordinating the program, putting the program together. So there'll be others, entertainment and others, speakers will be presented that evening as part of the weekend of celebration of Malcolm in relation to reparations. Our good sister Nkechi Taifa is coordinating the program on Friday at the Friday afternoon at 12 to 5, I believe 11 to 5 at the Landsberg Park over in Southwest. So after that, people will be coming from out of town. I understand a lot of people will be from out of town coming in DC to share with us. In fact, it was mentioned on the radio today on Carl Nelson's show. So that's what's going on that weekend of May the 16th and the 17th. That Friday will be in Cobra, DC in Cobra, and Saturday will be in Nkechi and her group, the Reparations Network, and that evening will be the United Black Community, our annual Kuzaliwa celebration.
So look out for that. You'll see emails and flyers for that, for both programs that we just mentioned. So look out for those two programs. And we look forward to seeing you all then.
Yes. Baba, great program. Great presentation.
Thank you, Baba. Appreciate it.
Good, informative, very informative. Yeah.
Hey, bro.
I took notes, so
Yes. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
yeah. Keep up the good work, bro.
Yeah, bro. Choir. Thank you all.
Okay, choir.
Rashi.
Yeah, bro.